Imagine standing on a bridge where both ends are engulfed in flames. For thousands of Nigerians, this is not just a metaphor, it is a daily, suffocating reality. Behind them lies a homeland crippled by economic decay, systemic corruption, and a vanishing middle class. Ahead lies a foreign soil that once promised prosperity but now delivers a lethal brand of hatred. This is the tragedy of the Nigerian migrant, trapped between a failing state and a violent host. Nigeria was once the undisputed giant of the continent, fueled by oil wealth and an intellectual vibrancy that commanded global respect. However, decades of mismanagement have hollowed out the nation's core. Today, the streets of Lagos and Abuja tell a different story. It is a story of resilience meeting a brick wall of inflation and unemployment. When the lights go out and the factories close, the only dream left for the youth is the dream of living. The statistics are more than just numbers, they are the heartbeat of a dying hope. With inflation reaching record highs, the cost of a simple loaf of bread has become a luxury for many. Families who once considered themselves comfortable are now sliding into poverty. The failure of the Nigerian state to provide basic security and economic stability is the primary catalyst for migration. People do not live because they want to, they live because they must survive. South Africa, the Rainbow Nation, was long seen as the ultimate destination for those fleeing hardship. It represented the pinnacle of African infrastructure and opportunity. For the Nigerian entrepreneur, Johannesburg was a land of gold where hard work could finally pay off. They packed their bags, sold their remaining assets, and kissed their weeping mothers goodbye. They carried with them the heavy burden of being the family's last hope for a better life in a distant land. But the welcome was short-lived. Over the last decade, a dark sentiment has been brewing in the townships and city centers of South Africa. Local frustrations over service delivery, unemployment, and crime began to find a convenient scapegoat, the foreign national. Nigerians, often the most visible and successful of the migrant groups, became the primary targets. The rhetoric shifted from Pan-African brotherhood to a dangerous us versus them narrative that eventually ignited into physical violence and widespread chaos. Xenophobia is not a new phenomenon, but its intensity in South Africa has shocked the world. It is a fire fueled by misinformation and political opportunism. When politicians blame foreigners for the lack of jobs, the streets listen. The resulting explosions of anger are visceral. Shops are looted, cars are overturned, and lives are extinguished in the blink of an eye. For the Nigerian living in Pretoria or Hillbrow, every knock on the door carries the weight of dread. The Whistler newspaper highlights a painful irony: the very people who fought against apartheid are now practicing a different form of exclusion. The memory of Nigeria's immense support for the anti-apartheid movement seems to have faded into the shadows of history. During the dark years of white minority rule, Nigeria provided passports, education, and millions of dollars to the South African cause. Today, that debt of gratitude is being paid in blood and the burning of Nigerian-owned businesses. Violence is often preceded by words. The digital space has become a battlefield where hashtags are used to dehumanize migrants. On social media, Nigerians are frequently painted with a broad brush as criminals or drug dealers. This narrative ignores the thousands of doctors, engineers, and honest traders contributing to the South African economy. When the humanity of a group is stripped away online, it becomes much easier for the mob to justify violence against them in the physical world. When the riots break out, the police response is often criticized as being too little, too late. In many instances, videos show law enforcement officers standing by as shops are stripped bare. This perceived complicity creates a sense of lawlessness that emboldens the perpetrators. For the Nigerian victim, there is no one to call. They are residents of a country that does not want them, protected by a police force that often views them with the same suspicion as the mob. Consider the story of the small business owner in Johannesburg. He spent years saving money in Lagos to start a grocery store. He paid his taxes, hired local staff, and integrated into the community. In a single night of madness, his life's work is reduced to ashes. The fire doesn't just consume his goods, it consumes his dignity. He is left standing in the rubble, wondering how the African dream turned into such a vivid, inescapable nightmare for him. Back in Nigeria, the government's reaction is often seen as inadequate. Diplomatic protest and strongly worded statements do little to protect the person being chased by a mob. the Nigerian diaspora feels abandoned by their own leaders. There is a prevailing sense that the government only cares about the remittances sent home, not the safety of the citizens sending them. This creates a secondary trauma, the feeling of being an orphan on the global stage, belonging nowhere. The cycle of violence triggers a cycle of retaliation. When news of attacks in South Africa reaches Nigeria, anger boils over. In past years, South African businesses in Lagos and Abuja have been targeted by protesters. This eye-for-an-eye approach only deepens the rift between the two largest economies on the continent. It creates a volatile environment where the actions of a few can destabilize the lives of millions across thousands of miles. The diplomatic bridge is slowly crumbling. Why do they stay? This is the question many ask from the safety of their homes. The answer is as simple as it is heartbreaking: there is nothing to go back to. For many migrants, returning home is viewed as the ultimate failure. They have spent their family's life savings to get abroad. To return empty-handed is to face the mockery of the community and the same economic prison they tried to escape. They choose the danger of xenophobia over the certainty of poverty. The psychological toll is immense. Living in a constant state of hypervigilance changes a person. Nigerian migrants describe the trauma of hearing footsteps in the hallway or the sound of a raised voice in the street. Children are growing up in environments where they are told they don't belong because of their parents' accent or origin. This creates a generation of displaced souls who are neither fully Nigerian nor fully South African, caught in a cultural and social vacuum. The Whistler newspaper argues that this crisis is an indictment of African leadership. If Nigeria functioned as it should, its citizens wouldn't be desperate enough to stay in places where they are hated. If South Africa addressed its internal inequalities, its citizens wouldn't need to blame neighbors for their plight. The failure of two states has collided, creating a human rights catastrophe. The victims are the ordinary people who just wanted to work, trade, and provide for their families. In 2019, the tension reached a breaking point, leading to a massive evacuation effort. Private Nigerian airlines volunteered to fly citizens back home for free. The images of Nigerians landing in Lagos, kissing the tarmac, were bittersweet. They were safe from the mobs, but they were returning to the same broken system that forced them out in the first place. For many, the relief of survival was quickly replaced by the cold reality of unemployment and economic stagnation. Economic migration is a global phenomenon, but in Africa, it is uniquely painful because of the Pan-African promise. We were told that the borders were colonial relics and that we were brothers. The xenophobic violence in South Africa shatters that illusion. It suggests that the African century is being undermined from within. When a Nigerian cannot feel safe in South Africa, and a South African cannot trust a Nigerian, the entire continent's progress is held back by the chains of prejudice. Education and cultural exchange have been suggested as solutions, but can they stop a fire? Can they stop a machete? The roots of the problem are systemic and economic. As long as there is extreme poverty and a lack of opportunity, the foreigner will always be an easy target for those seeking a cause for their misery. Real change requires bold political will from both Abuja and Pretoria. It requires more than just handshakes between presidents, it requires justice for the victims. The media plays a critical role in this narrative. Often, the focus is only on the moments of extreme violence. But the daily microaggressions are just as damaging. It is the refusal of service, the sneer from a neighbor, or the bribe demanded by a corrupt official who knows you have no recourse. These smaller wounds bleed the spirit of the migrant dry. It is a slow-motion tragedy that rarely makes the headlines until something finally explodes in flames. We must also look at the resilience of those who stay. Despite the threats, many Nigerians continue to build, innovate, and contribute to South African society. They form community watches, they support local charities, and they refuse to be defined by the hatred of others. Their courage is a testament to the Nigerian spirit, a spirit that refuses to be broken by a failed state at home or a hostile environment abroad. They are the heroes of a story nobody wanted to write. The Whistler's opinion piece serves as a wake-up call. It reminds us that a nation that cannot protect its citizens at home loses the moral authority to protect them abroad. Nigeria's internal failure is the root cause of its external humiliation. To fix the crisis in the diaspora, Nigeria must first fix the crisis within its own borders. It must become a country where people want to stay, not a place they are desperate to flee at any personal cost. As the sun sets over the high veld in South Africa and the chaotic streets of Lagos, the dilemma remains. The bridge is still on fire. For the migrant, the choice is between a home that failed them and a host that hates them. This is not just a Nigerian problem or a South African problem, it is an African tragedy. It challenges us to rethink what it means to be a neighbor and what it means to be a citizen in a globalized world. The future of Africa depends on the mobility of its people and the strength of its nations. If we allow xenophobia and state failure to win, we are choosing a future of isolation and poverty. The stories of those trapped in between must be heard. Their lives are not pawns in a political game, they are the true cost of systemic failure. We must demand better from our leaders and from ourselves. The fire on the bridge must be put out. We leave you with a question that haunts every Nigerian who has ever looked at a passport: if your home is no longer safe and the world is no longer welcoming, where do you go? The tragedy of being trapped between Nigeria's failure and South Africa's violence is a burden no soul should have to carry. It is time for a new narrative, one where every African is safe at home and respected abroad. The journey toward that future begins with the truth.